Hey, what's up, masters? Welcome to another episode. Man, I haven't done an intro in a while. I almost butchered my own intro. Welcome to another episode of Path to Mastery podcast. And today we are with Mr. Brian Will. What is going on, Brian?
Hey David, how are you doing? Everything's good for me. I lost my internet, so I scrambled over here. I had to reset this thing up so I could do this today, but I made it on time.
Awesome. Well, appreciate it. I'm glad you were able to make things work. And I love the background, man. I was just going to say that's an amazing home you live in.
Yeah, it's not mine.
So, oh, that's cool. Well, thanks for jumping on with us today. And today we're going to talk about you have a new book coming out as well, called No, which I'm excited to talk about because me, I'm in the sales space. That's
Yep.
my space, and you also have your other book that we're going to get into, and you are the Dropout Millionaire. That's what you call yourself.
The Dropout multi-millionaire, actually. Yes.
Sorry, I forgot the
I
multi
always say
there.
anybody can be a millionaire. You got to
Yeah,
be a multi-millionaire to get going.
yeah. These days, what they say 60's the new 40, and being a millionaire is the new the new broke. That's actually that's not true. That's not true. But yeah, definitely things have obviously kind of moved to the next level with everything happening, costs and inflation and everything, man, everything out there. The cost of living, like back in the day. Remember back in the day, if someone was making 100 grand, you're like, yeah, it's pretty good, man. You're making six figures. Now it's like you can't even live on six figures
That's
anymore.
that's a starting pay. Graduate out of college with no experience.
Yeah, man. Thank God I was making that when I was much younger. But all right, well, listen, it's nice to have you here, and let me tell our listeners a little bit about you, and then we'll just jump into it. So, Brian Will is an industry expert in sales and management, a best-selling author of the Wall Street Journal and U.S. Today hit book, The Dropout Multi-Millionaire. I don't want to forget multi. With over 35 years experience as a serial entrepreneur, Brian has a proven track record of success, having created 7 highly successful companies across 4 different industries with a combined worth of over $500 million at their peak. Awesome. And today, Brian's a visionary business leader owning a growing chain of restaurants in the Atlanta area, an insurance and technology company in Denver, and a residential and commercial real estate business in Florida and Georgia. His expertise in turnaround projects and ability to drive billions of dollars in sales have made him a sought after consultant speaker in the business world. So, again, appreciate you being here today with us, Brian. Thank you.
David, I appreciate it. It's going to be fun.
Yeah. So I always ask my guests, like, what value do you want to bring to the audience before we even record? And so I'm just going to jump right into it today.
Sure.
And you talked about the importance of having a growth mindset. So talk to us. What first off, what do you categorize? Like, what is a growth mindset? I'll just simplify the question.
Well, so most of the people I deal with are entrepreneurs. We call them well-funded startups through 10 million revenue. And a challenge I see with a lot of folks is if they're not growing the way they want, or if they have a business that's not profitable, the problem is they're hanging on too much to what they got and they're not focusing on growth. Growth and revenue fixes almost all problems in a business. So we really have to focus on the growth and not just focus on what we don't want to lose, which is both business and personal in life, quite frankly.
So growth, you mean like growth is what? Like growing to the next level, or is it like what exactly do you mean by that?
Yeah, so I'll give you an example in the restaurant business, right? I own a small chain of restaurants here in Atlanta. And if I pick the one that's right up the road from me here, break even on that restaurant. And I mean, if that restaurant does $1,500,000 in sales, I make $0, right? So if I make $1,499,000, I lose $1,000. The only way for that restaurant to succeed and prosper and make money is for me to grow it from its current $1.5 million revenue up to 2 million or 2.5. Too many people try to take that 1.5 million and start cutting expenses. They cut expenses, they cut food costs, they cut labor, they get cheaper products in. They try to save their way into making money, and that's just a
Mm.
horrible idea. You need to grow your way into making money and not sacrifice quality, labor, or anything else. So that's a perfect example of where you need to grow and not try to save. in order to in order to succeed.
Got it. Okay, that makes sense. Just so I understand, and maybe for people listening, so if you're basically you're saying if you're doing 1.5, you're at zero because your expenses are 1.5, or because like
Yeah, sure. So
what do you mean by that?
every business out there has two cost categories. The first one is what we call our fixed OpEx, and the second is what we call our variables. So we know in any business, you're going to have a fixed OpEx. You're going to have rent, you're going to have utilities, you're going to have some kind of overhead expenses. You have a manager that you can't get rid of who's on salary. You've got certain things that you're going to have to pay whether you are open or not, right? A good example of this was COVID.
Sure.
When we shut down in COVID, I still had a massive amount of expenses even though we had no revenues, because those are bills that you got to pay no matter what. So the first thing you look at is, what is your fixed OpEx? Well, you have to generate enough revenue at your particular profit margin to cover that fixed OpEx. But then when you get into actually doing the selling, you have variable expenses, right? Which is your sales force, it's your product cost, your cost of goods, et
Sure.
cetera. These are your variables. So not only are you having to cover the fixed OpEx, but you're also having to cover that variable as you grow. So we like to say at 1,500,000 in this particular restaurant, you have a 0% profit margin. Even though you might be making 70% on your liquor and 50% on your food, you still haven't covered the fixed operational costs and you
Got it.
haven't covered
Okay.
your variables. So, but above 1.5, we have about a 50% margin. So at 1.5, I make zero, but at 2 million, I make $250,000, right? So your marginal profit margin, the marginal profit margin increases the more revenue you do over your fixed cost. That's kind of technical. So if I lost
Got
anybody
it.
there, sorry.
No, no, I that makes sense. I just wanted to clarify, just because, for some, they hear, well, the restaurant's bringing in 1.5, and that I mean, I've never ran a restaurant, so I guess I don't know the overhead of running a restaurant, but you would sound like, okay, that would be profitable, right? You would
You would
think,
think. People come in
but
on Friday night and
yeah,
go, "Oh my gosh, you're killing it." Well, what about
yeah,
Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday?
sure. Yeah, got it. Okay, cool. So that's an obvious. And so the way I wanted the reason I asked the question is I wanted to make sure, like, you weren't saying, well, geez, you made 1.5 last year, so you need to grow that. Like, just because I made, like, let's say last year did 1.5, and you had a 30% profit margin on that, right?
Sure.
So you made, I don't know, what would that be?
450,000.
400. Yeah, okay, exactly. So then, in order to grow, you'd say, well, next year we need to do 1.75, right? Or whatever it is.
Yeah.
That's kind of what that's
Yeah.
what I was
No,
trying
that
to
where's where I was
discern the
going.
difference.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
All
And
right,
honestly,
perfect.
growth, you don't necessarily need to grow in any business. If you're doing 1,500,000 and making 450,000, you have a choice. Choice one is to grow and make more money. Choice two is, I'm happy making the money I'm making. Maybe I start cutting back on my personal time invested and I gain more lifestyle. Really depends on what you want as a business owner. You want more money? You want more lifestyle? Make that decision, then we can tell you how to manipulate the numbers within your business to get to your goal.
So you said you're not going to save your way into making more money. And I think I'm glad you brought that up, because it is a huge, I deal with a lot of salespeople, entrepreneurs, and it's interesting because when times get a little challenging, it seems like that's the first thing that they do is start trying to cut. Right? Is
Right.
that what you see as well? So
And
why is that a mistake? Talk to us about that.
yeah, so I'll give you an example on it's kind of the same scenario, but let's flip it around. When I first got into insurance sales, my first sales job, I remember my first week I bought 20 leads and I went out and I sold 12 policies. The next week I was like, oh, that works. So I bought 40 leads and I sold 20 policies. The next week I bought 60 leads and I sold, X number of policies. Well, within 6 weeks, I was a top sales agent in this organization I joined. And we had a conference and all 15 agents came in and they said, oh my God, how are you making, all these sales? I said, well, I bought more leads. And they said, we can't afford to buy leads. I
Mm.
said, that's why you're not making sales. You're trying to cheap out on the front end, which is causing you not to make the money on the back end. You got to put the money in or you're not going to get it out the backside.
Well, I love the conversation, brother, because this is I feel like there's a lot of people out there that experience what I experienced, just growing up really poor, not understanding investing. It was more about saving,
Yeah.
So it's that mindset of, okay, I got to save money as opposed to spend money to make more money,
Right. They're
right?
trying
Like
to
that.
squeeze more revenue out of the first 10 leads. There's only so much revenue in there. You got to go buy more.
Yeah, but that's not easy for a lot of people, Will, Brian, right? Because, like I said, for me, it wasn't. Like I've been a phone guy 35 years. It doesn't cost money to pick up phones, right? Like I can phone, I can door knock, I like that stuff's easy for me. But then
Right.
when it comes to, okay, let's run some ads, like, oh, well, hold on a minute, because I don't see an instant ROI on that, right? How common is that?
I'll give you an example. I did a speech for a franchise organization in August as a national company, and they had hundreds of franchisees there. And I did a speech on profit and loss analysis, right? And I get six P&Ls, two from the top two, two from the middle, and two from the bottom two franchisees. And I ran all the core metrics, which are 11, compared them against each other. And the only marketable difference between the top agency and the bottom agency was the percentage that they spent on marketing. That was it. My top agencies were spending 8% and growing and massively profitable. The bottom franchises were spending 4% and they were break even or losing money. The only difference between those two franchises was the amount of money they invested. And the people in the bottom say, "Well, I can't afford to spend more money on marketing." Then you're never going to grow. You should not have got in this business. You've got to spend the money to get the momentum, to overcome the attrition, to build the value in the sales so that you can be the top person. I would say, do you want to be the top franchise? Yes, I do. Then spend 8%. The math is there.
8%.
It's simple. It's just simple. It's undeniable across hundreds of franchises. So yes, you have to invest or don't do it.
Yeah, well, we invest now. 8% though seems low. Is that where did you come up with that number?
That's why I'm telling you, I took the top two, middle two, bottom two, and it was 8%, 6%, 4% of their gross revenue is what they spent on marketing.
Gross.
And
Okay.
we know what their return on investment. So the top guys made $15 in revenue for every dollar they spent. The bottom ones made $10 in revenue for every dollar they spent. No, $5. It was 5, 10, and 15. So you're still making a profit at the 4% investment of gross revenue, but it wasn't enough sales to overcome the loss that you're experiencing of customers leaving. The folks
Mm,
spending 8 were overcoming the loss, or what we call the attrition, and then they were also growing on top of that. And
wow.
it's so simple when you look at it, and you can't argue with the math. If I'm looking at 100 units and they're all doing the same thing, and then the numbers all line up, which they do, then it is what it is. You just got to spend more money,
I
and it will
love it.
work.
I feel like it's brilliant that you just have the 8%. I'm gonna test this out for a while and see if I feel
Well,
like
that
I
might
do
work
a
in
little
your
more.
market. It worked in theirs, which is a
Yeah,
national cleaning
got it.
franchise, right? So they were cleaning houses for a living, which is a residual income stream, sort of.
Okay. Well, yeah. Okay. So let's do this. Let's shift gears a little bit because it says strong in soft skills. Yeah, we're gonna get to questions. We'll let you guys know when we're open for questions. So yeah, we are on Clubhouse, by the way. So if anybody in Clubhouse does have a question, feel free, raise your hand. We'll bring you up, and then we're gonna spend like the last 20 minutes or so with questions. So if anybody else wants to come up, just raise your hand, and Glenn and myself will bring you up. And yeah, I want you to meet my partner Glenn in a few minutes, Brian. He's a
Excellent.
marketing expert as well. All right, so let's talk about this because it says strong soft skills. What is a strong soft skill? Like I don't even know what that is, man.
So when we talk about building organizations, I'll give you a simple example and then we can expand from there. So if we're talking about building a business, I say most businesses are started by what we call technicians, right? And I always use Joe the plumber as an example. If Joe works at a plumbing company for 20 years and he decides one day he wants to start his own business, Joe quits his job, starts his own business, and he starts Joe's Plumbing. Now, if Joe's Plumbing fails, it won't be because Joe doesn't know how to be a plumber. It will be because Joe doesn't know how to run a business. And running the business is the soft skill. Plumbing is the hard skill. That's the technical piece. So that's my simplistic way of saying it. Most businesses fail, in my opinion, because the entrepreneur, the business owner, the person who started it, doesn't understand the business side of the business, which is what we call the soft skills. It's the mental piece. It's why are you doing this? It's why should anybody buy your product? It's why should anybody buy your product from you? What makes you unique and different that they don't just go up the street and buy it from somebody else? It's who you are. Just because you start a business doesn't mean you're a CEO. Most people that start businesses are terrible CEOs. They're usually technicians
Mm.
or salespeople, right? It's finding out who you are and who you're not, and then it's learning how to understand numbers. I'll give you an example. And I've done call center direct to consumer consulting for 20 years, right? Trained thousands of salespeople in my sales systems, and we always do a bottom up P&L, right? Every single salesperson in an organization has an individual profit and loss statement attached to the parent company. In most organizations I've gone into, we've actually got rid of the bottom 15% of the salespeople because their personal P&L was losing money and they were costing the company leads, revenue, overhead, OPEX, the whole deal, right? So we have to learn how organizations work. And by the way, understanding that bottom up P&L is another soft skill. It's not about selling, it's about the soft skill of understanding whether they're profitable or not based on all the expenses. So soft skills are really, really important. It's understanding your personal filter. It's understanding if you know how to process information. If you've never successfully run a business before, you don't know how to process information correctly to make yourself successful in business. This is why we do coaching, by the way, and you do coaching. It's because you've been there and done that. You've made mistakes that you can help people overcome. You know where they're going to fail and you know what will succeed. And you literally walk in and say, don't do that, do this. And they come out better in the end. That's because you understand the soft skills.
Yeah, it was funny. I was just gonna say that the one thing I've done probably more than anybody else is fail. And so everything you're talking about today, I'm just like, I went through that. Yep. I was a horrible leader. I tried to run my real estate business for years and bringing in people. Well, first I tried to do it myself and that didn't work. Then I decided, okay, well, finally, after I beat my head off the wall, said I'm going to start hiring people. And then I was a horrible leader of other people. I was a good salesman, but not
Yeah.
not good in those soft skills you're talking about, right?
Yeah.
So
Every
do you
organization needs multiple personalities. That wasn't yours. You need somebody else to do that.
Yeah. So is that was going to be my next question. Do you hire out to find those skills, or do you, I mean, I guess it depends on the size of your business, right? Or
Mhm,
do you focus on developing those skills? I kind of I did both. I think in the beginning it was like work on my skills. Like I did John Maxwell
mhm,
events, and Keller Williams had all these leadership, different
mhm.
types of boot camps and trainings. And what's your thought on that?
So most people that start as a solopreneur, we'll call it, right? I'm an individual, I start my own business. You have to wear all the hats. That's just the way it is. But for starting as a solopreneur, you need to make a decision on whether you want to stay as an individual, what we call self-employed person, rich dad, poor dad, or whether you want to become a business owner and build an organization that has intrinsic value. If you want to stay a solopreneur, then you're going to wear all the hats. You're never going to get huge and you won't have anything that has any value that can be sold, but you're in control of everything. In this case, you might want to hire somebody to do some of the things you don't know how to do. If you want to build an organization that gets big and can operate without you, that you can walk away or sell one day to some big venture capital firm and have a giant exit, then you're going to have to start small. But every time you get a little money, you got to replace yourself in the part of the business that you're not good at. I am a terrible manager of details. Don't give me details. I can't handle them. My brain doesn't work that way. I'm too ADHD. I have to hire managers to do that for me, right? I don't want to be the CEO technically because that's the person who has to sit around the office directing traffic and making everything work. I'm a hell of a salesperson and I'm a good entrepreneur, which means I think at 30,000 feet. But I let everybody else do every other thing within my companies, right? So make a decision. You want to be on your own? Do you want to build a company? There are positives and negatives to both of those. And once you make that decision, we can tell you how to grow that business. And yes, you can hire it or you can bring in partners. If you don't have any money and you're starting a business and you're the technician, you might need to bring in a partner that can be the manager and the salesperson, right? Or you might be the salesperson, you need to hire a technician to do the jobs and manage the office. So it depends. Every business is different.
Smart. So I'm going to back up a little bit into what you talked about earlier about saving money. Something I wrote down on my notes here is coaching. Like
Mhm.
that's typically, at least from what I see, when times get a little challenging, it's like one of the first things people cut. When I feel like that's probably the thing you should, like, literally, I just doubled down on it. Like that's my mindset.
I literally
Like,
did a podcast with David Meltzer the other day. Do you know who he is?
oh yeah, of course, yeah.
David's huge, right? He's a executive coach to three of the top Fortune 50 companies. And he made the exact same comment. He goes, when you see somebody start to struggle and they get rid of their coach, that's when they need to double down because the decisions they're making are wrong and they need somebody to come tell them how to do it right.
Yeah. But what do you say to the person that's in the midst of it right now where they are accustomed to a certain amount of lead flow and volume in their business, and then they are seeing it being affected? What do you tell them in the moment?
So, a couple of things here. I would say, what did your coach say? And did you listen? And as a coach, David, I'm sure you've had people say, oh, yeah, I'll do that. And then they never do it. Or they do half what you say. And then they come back and say it didn't work because they didn't do everything you said. So that's pretty typical. So, my first question is, what did the coach tell you? And did you do everything they said? And if they literally absolutely did everything they said, then you might have need to get a different coach, right?
Mm,
But I will tell you this, and I use this example all the time. Apple Computer, one of the largest companies in the world, run by a guy named Tim Cook. Tim Cook's clearly a very, very, very smart man. But Tim has a board of directors that comes in every quarter and sits down with him and says, what are your issues? What are your challenges? What are your problems? What can we help you with? He tells them what's going on. They start giving him advice. And when they all leave, he takes their advice and he uses that to make Apple go forward. Tim Cook also has an executive coach that the board of directors pays for personally. If Tim Cook needs a personal coach or a business coach, what makes you as a young entrepreneur think you don't?
mm. Yeah, I'm with you on that. But just to be devil's advocate, again, and I'm a coach, so I what would you say? Well, Tim Cook has the money to do that,
hmm Yeah.
right?
So maybe you need to go find somebody who will help you out for a little while. Or if you already have a coach, say, hey, man, we're on rocky times here. Can I delay payment to you? I'll make it up when things take off again. But if you walk away from that coaching without even trying, I mean, this is about sales, right? So sell something.
Mm,
Sell your coach if you have to.
amen. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, you're right. Sales is like, yeah, I can always worst case scenario, pick up the phone and and make some money. So you're not kidding. I was talking to a guy yesterday, ironically, a good guy, and he's been working on this real estate project, and it's setting him. He's almost there too, but it's setting him back a little bit. And he's selling his motorcycle, and he's selling a few other things. He's like, I haven't driven this Harley in
hmm
years. He's like, I'm not giving up on this project, but I need some more revenue. And it's exactly what you just said.
What's important to you, the
Yeah,
motorcycle or your business in future?
yeah,
I mean, I've
absolutely.
sold everything before. I've lost all my money in my first company. I sold 2 houses, 3 cars, 2 motorcycles. I sold everything I owned and had $5,000 cash left just so I could start over. Sometimes you gotta do what you gotta do.
Got to do what you got to do, man. All right, awesome. Well, in a couple minutes, I'm going to open it up to the Clubhouse community. We got about 25 people in Clubhouse right now. That's cool.
Nice.
And so we'll take some questions. So if you guys have a question, feel free, raise your hand, just come up. There's also a link, and if you go to the link on the very top, there's Glenn and I do a weekly webinar every Thursday. If you want to join us, just go to davidsfreewebinar.com and get registered. So if you're listening, that's just the link, davidsfreewebinar.com. Also, if you want to follow, make sure you're following this podcast. It's pathtomastery.net. All right. So a couple minutes, I'm going to open up the Clubhouse. I got another question for you here. It's gonna relate to the ego. And
Mhm.
so how does ego affect success?
So you remember when I talked about that coach who gave you advice and you either didn't follow it or you only followed half of it and then you did your own thing? That's an ego problem. Okay. If you've brought somebody in that has been there and done that, that's 10 steps ahead of you, that's more successful, and you aren't listening to them, you have an ego problem. And ego problems kill more businesses than you can possibly imagine. CEOs or entrepreneurs start businesses and they think they have to know everything and they have to pretend like they know everything. And that is a critical mistake. If you're going to be a CEO or an entrepreneur, you need to learn that genius is through asking questions, not giving answers. Okay. You ask the right questions to everybody involved and you will get a better answer than if you're trying to figure it out yourself. I did a podcast with Jason Duncan and we titled it,
Uh,
Don't Take Your Own Damn Advice, right? Because sometimes your own damn advice is wrong. So ego is what gets in the way of people succeeding more times than not. I work with an organization up in Ohio that does startups. They have $2 billion worth of companies they've invested in help. And they make them go through this huge process just to get accepted. And after they accept these people into the program, I said, what's your success rate? And he said, 50%. I said, well, of the 50% that fail, why do they fail? And he said, 50% of them fail for ego. These are people that have taken venture capital and had a year-long study program working with professionals in their industry, and their ego gets in the way and they fail. Entrepreneurs need to check their ego. Get a coach, get somebody to help you. Critical.
I love it, man. It's funny talking to you. It's kind of like talking to myself a little bit, just direct to the point. Short. It's all right, cool, man. It's nice. All right, so let's do this. I'm gonna open it up to let me actually toss it over to Glenn, who's with us on Clubhouse. Glenn, do you have any I know Glenn's a marketing guy too, so he may have some questions about the marketing, but whatever. Glenn, do you have any questions for Brian?
I do. First of all, I want to say thank you, and also Brian, for the opportunity, man. That is some powerful knowledge that you shared with us today.
Thank you, Glenn.
I got a simple question, just very simple. At what point, if I, as an entrepreneur, at what point in the process is a good point to be like, you know what, it's time to start hiring somebody to help me?
So this depends on your cash flow, right? If, again, as I said before, if you're starting out as a solopreneur, depending on what it is you're doing, whether it's product or service, it depends on your cash flow. But I caution entrepreneurs to not take salaries as long as they can and take their capital and hire people to fill in where they are weak so that their business will grow much, much faster, right? If you're burning through your capital paying yourself, then you're never going to hire the right people to come in and help you get that business where it really needs to go. So early as you have the cash flow, you need to do it.
Love that. That's great. Thank you for that, Brian. I appreciate your time, and you too, David. This is awesome.
Thank you, Glenn. I always appreciate you, man. And yeah, man, I'm with Brian on that too, man. As soon as you can, you gotta. And I mean, we can even go a little deeper on that, Brian. Like, what is the? You tell me. Like, so one of the reasons that I like the challenges is we tend to be perfectionists in a lot of, right? And
Yep.
we feel like nobody else can do it better than I can. And then I find people all the time doing work themselves that they could pay somebody $17, $20, $25 an hour to do, not realizing now that they're costing themselves hundreds of dollars an hour in some cases because they're doing the work.
And do you know why that is? It's because of their ego problem, right? So you're exactly right here. Again, we have new entrepreneur CEOs who come in and they hire somebody expecting that person to operate at the same level that they operate. And there's a first mistake. Nobody you hire is ever going to work as hard as you, is ever going to care as much as you, and they're never going to be as good as you, ever. So get that out of your head, right? You need to, best case scenario, that person's going to be 70, maybe 80% as good as you, but that's it. Let me tell you, if you hire somebody who does 70% of the work you do, you have a gold mine sitting right there. The problem is you're over there going, but wait, I hired them and they should do everything I used to do. But no, they shouldn't. They're never going to care as much as you. I had a business owner in Florida, and he runs a restaurant, and he told me this story. He goes, I hired a manager to run this restaurant, and I walked in at 8:00 one night and all the lights were on full blast. And I couldn't believe that she was managing the store and didn't notice that the lights were on. It's the first thing I saw. I said, that's because you're the owner. She doesn't give a shit about the lights. She's not looking at that. She's just trying to do her daily little tasks. You need to get over that, right? So as an entrepreneur, never expect anybody to do what you can do. 70% is good. And then here's where I know I have an entrepreneur that's making a mistake. When they say, oh, I'll just do it because I can do it faster.
Yeah.
When you say that, you are limiting your ability to ever grow your business past where it's at today, because you're going to end up doing every single job in the company. You're never going to gain trust in your employees. You're never going to train them to the level they need to be at, and you're never going to get away from it. This is what causes burnout in entrepreneurs. I'm so burned out. You're burned out because you're trying to do everybody else's job. Stop doing everybody else's job. Let them do their job. Understand it's only going to be 70% as good as you, and live your life and grow your business. You go do what you do. You know, I can outgrow that 30% that they're not doing that I could do better by doing what I do best.
So and I got to touch to that point you just made though, but the 70, I'm with you on that. So the 70% though needs to be like legit, right? Like even their 70% is only it's only 70% of me, but it's still that there needs to be a level, right? So I don't know if I agree with that 100%. 70% is I feel like it needs to be higher than that. That's where I'm struggling a little bit with this.
If you can get them to 80, good job. I've hired thousands of people and never gotten anybody that would do it. And then they want to know when their vacation is, and they're going to lunch, and they're taking next week off, and my cat threw up and I can't come in today. It's just never going to happen. I mean, if you figure it out, good luck. But the larger your organization gets, the more accurate that statement I just made is. If there's 2 of you in the office, maybe not. When there's 200 of you, forget about it.
Yeah. All right. Well, maybe I guess you're right. I mean, you've been studying this stuff. I guess the challenge is like, like you hire someone and they do something, and then you go look at it and it's missing, like things are wrong, and you're just like, okay, now what do I do? Go back, and do I have to look through every single thing?
Yes, you have to train until you're comfortable with them doing it right. It's no different than training a sales organization. If you had 100 salespeople that you trained, how many of them are going to be top closers? How many of them are going to be average? How many are going to suck?
So you're saying 70% when you bring them in, and then you train them up.
Train them up as best you can. They're still never going to care as much as you because it's not their business. Look, the worst part is when you've got people that have been with you for 10 years and you're paying them 125, 150,000, and they're looking at you making $1 million. And it doesn't, pretty soon they're going, well, why am I not making $500,000? I'm the one here doing all the work. That's another danger you're going to get into down the road as you start getting really, really successful.
I want my people to make $1 million, bro. And
I'd love it too. But
yeah, you know what? You can make $1 million. Shit, you make $1 million. I'm making 20 million. So let's roll, right? All right. Anyway, I love it. So we have I hope I say your name right. Asara is on the stage. She raised her hand. Do you have a question, Asara?
Hello, yes. So I don't know if this falls under entrepreneurship or sales, but my question is on self-branding. So I'm trying to formulate a marketing approach to branding my political image. So I'm trying to be a little bit smarter on my social media, trying to build my following, all these things. But I was just wondering, is it a good idea to take on the marketing approach when it comes to self-branding as a political figure?
So you obviously, you probably heard or whatever that I sit on city council in my hometown, right? So
I did not. No, I did not.
Yeah, I've done the whole political thing, ran my race, I won. I'm a year and a half in at this point. So I have been down the road that you're trying to go down. Have you been elected yet, or are you trying to get elected somewhere?
Yes, so I'm on the school board currently.
Okay.
But I have a 10-year goal, and in 10 years I would like to run for city council and then end up in Jefferson City with the state legislators.
Okay, that's a good goal. City council is a good stepping stone into that. And yeah, if you're branding into yourself into city council, then I have a political website, I have a personal website, and I have a business website, and now I've got my book website. So each one of those is a different brand. And my political website is all about politics, and it's about things that are going on. In your case, it'd be things that are going on the school board. But you need to make sure that every message you put out there is about how you did this and you did that. Whether you like him or not, Donald Trump is the master of personal branding. No matter anything comes out of his mouth is about Donald Trump, and it works from a personal branding standpoint. So don't feel bad about, tooting your own horn and making yourself look good. And I was a part of this. I was a part of that. I did this. I helped do that. That branding is critical, because at the end of the day, people need to think of your name and remember what they heard online. And you need to say it like 10 times.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm currently the only Hispanic elected official in my town.
That's huge.
But when I say that, I feel kind of like I don't want to throw that in people's faces. And also it comes with a lot of pressure, because you're representing a whole community, and I don't want it to seem like that. I don't want people to be like, well, she doesn't speak for me. But I also wanted to use it as kind of like a strength of mine of, well, I'm here. Yeah.
First of all, it is a strength of yours, and it is something you need to capitalize on, and it is something you need to talk about. In this political environment today, particularly, that is a huge win for you when you start to move up to the city council and other levels. It's something that you absolutely do not be afraid to talk about. That's a power
Okay.
base for you.
Thank you so much.
Amen. Yeah, 100%. You know, money follows attention. That's the premise that we operate under, right, Glenn and
Yep.
I. And you know, you got to get that attention. People need to know who you are, and yeah, so we got to be willing to toot our own horns because nobody else is going to do it for us. So,
Nope.
great question. So Suraj, I know you've raised your hand a couple times. Do you have a question for Brian?
Yeah, thank you so much. And for you, maybe good morning or good afternoon. And I'm just listening. And I'm playing a lot of roles in India. Earlier, I was in South Korea. I was working for a company. They manufacture medical devices. So I was working there as one of the R&D person. And then I was in manufacturing as well. I don't manufacture, but I just check that things are well or not. And I'm very sorry, I don't know how to speak. I'm not very good in speaker.
Do you have a question, or like, do you have a question or no?
Yeah, I have a question.
Okay, what my question is?
Yeah, my question is how to raise the money and as an entrepreneur, because I'm in India. We started a company and we have a good scope on this market, but I invested my own money. But now, how to raise money in foreign country or maybe among Indians investor, because in Indian investor I don't see any. Actually, for a small entrepreneur, they don't support as per my knowledge and as per my experience.
That's a very hard question. First of all, I don't know that much about India, but if you were in America, I would say if your product is good enough, it would not be that hard to raise money. So I would go back and look at whatever your product or service is. Is it something that people want? Is there a demand? Have you done any preliminary work to make sure that the market actually wants that product? And if there is, then you can start approaching people and raising money. If you've got a good product or service, it's not that hard, but you have to have something that's going to show your investors that it's worth putting money into. That's got to be your first step.
Awesome. Well, thank you for the question. Thank you for the answer. Yeah, I appreciate that. All right, I'm gonna toss it back to you, Brian. Thank you guys for your questions, everybody. Glenn, Asara. I hope I said your name. Did I say your name right? Actually, I don't even know. I hope I did. Okay, it's close.
Yes, it's Sarah.
Isara. Okay, good.
Yes.
and also Suraj, thank you for your question as well. So Brian, first off, how do we, for people that want to get in touch with you, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
So my website is www.brianwillmedia.com. brianwillmedia.com. My podcast shows are on there. My blogs are on there. My books are on there. Contact information. I run a mastermind and a one-on-one coaching program. Everything is on my website. That's the easiest way to get to me. Okay,
perfect. And in wrapping up, I mean, we talked about a lot today. I think it was a great conversation about business, and we had included some sales and some mindset in there. If there's one thing you want everybody to really walk away with from this today, what is that?
Sure. So I tell people this all the time. I get this question, can anybody succeed? And the answer is yes. But the path to success, if you look at it from 0 to whatever success level you want, is going to require you to go through what I call 100 lessons. Could be 50, could be 20. But there are a certain number of lessons you're going to have to go through from where you are to get where you want to be. If you will take the time and go through and learn every single one of these lessons, and by the way, most of them will result in a failure before you learn. So you're going to have to fail, learn, fail, learn, fail, learn, fail, learn, fail, learn. If you get to the last lesson, you will succeed. Too many people quit 50 lessons into 100 or 75 lessons into 100, and they don't get to the final lesson to where they get to where they want to go. So anybody can succeed if you will go through the number of lessons that you are required to learn, which is different than everybody else, and don't quit till you get there. That is the secret to success.
How does someone know, though? I mean,
you don't.
Like, how do you don't? So
I can tell you this. I can tell you this. If there are 100 lessons and you want to learn how to skip 50, you ready for this one? Hire a coach who's already made those 50 mistakes and have him tell you what not to do.
Amen to that, brother. Well,
that's what coaching is all about. Look, if I've already done it, just ask me. I'll tell you. Don't do that. Do this, do this, do this. Skip 50 lessons and I'll get you to the top of the ladder. If you're going to try to do it on your own, you're going to fail a lot. You need to get a coach and a mentor.
Well, my takeaway today is definitely the thing you talked about, the ego, and I think that's brilliant. And also the 8%, a lot of takeaways, the 8%, and then the 70%. You know, I think that definitely changes my perspective a little bit. So yeah, I'm gonna play around with that stuff and let you know. So
Yeah,
appreciate you being here today, man. Thank you for
it
your
was
time.
awesome, David. Thank you. I appreciate you having me.
All right, you got it.